Good afternoon, everyone. Bill Phillips from Prince George Daily News here with Tracy Calogheros for our weekly PG Talks session. We're kind of reduced numbers today. Mackenzie Kerr, Chuck Nisbet, and Todd Corrigal couldn't make it today. Apparently Chuck's getting his vaccination, so good luck with Chuck. He got his, I don't know why I couldn't reschedule to do this, but anyways.
Maybe he's just, they're all boycotting it because I wasn't here last week.
Yeah, and Mackenzie and Todd have work commitments. So once again, they're going to go with the paying gig rather than do this, but we'll forgive them this time. But so it's just the two of us today. So we probably won't go a full hour, but we got a few things we can talk about. The first up this week is the province unveiled earlier this week the sick pay, which is basically a bridging sick pay for about 3 days for COVID. So if you're feeling sick, and you can get 3 days off with pay while you get tested, and then the thought is that after 3 days you can access other programs like the federal sick pay law. So Tracy, do you think this is enough, or?
Yeah, I'm still kind of surprised that employers don't all provide sick leave. I really am sort of flabbergasted about that, but I guess I've had the luxury of making those decisions for my organization for the last couple of decades. Because I've been worried that the 10 days we provide isn't going to be enough once everyone's back to work. Because if you are ill at all, you need to stay home, and then you need to take the test and you got to wait for those results. And then if you do need to self-isolate, like, you're going to go through 10 days in no time at all. And it could happen multiple times a year. So I think any help is good. The 3 days from the province and the federal program will certainly assist people. I mean, the goal has to be to keep people at home so we're not spreading germs.
Yeah, absolutely. But the one thing that occurs to me is that like you say, in this day, you feel sick, you schedule a test, and then they say, okay, yeah, you've got COVID, you've got to stay home for 10 days or 2 weeks. And so if it's 2 weeks, then you're into 17 days. Well, 2 weeks, I guess, if you don't count the weekends in there, perhaps. But you're looking at 14 days off work, and that's now being pretty much mandated by the powers that be, by the government. So their mandate's telling us that we have to stay home for 2 weeks, but we're not covered for it. I don't know why it's been so hard and taking this long to come up with a program, even just during COVID, that will cover people for that full period of time.
Yeah, the federal EI does pretty good, doesn't it? Like, you can get onto an EI COVID sick benefit, I think, fairly quickly.
Yeah, I think that's the one that the feds brought in, and that is probably you have to apply for it, and it comes in. I think this one, if you just call in sick and tell them that you're going for a COVID test, that your employer is requested not to dock your pay for that period, and I think the province will basically cover that for your employer. So
I do think that's the right way to do it, where you're reimbursing the employers and allowing the employers, because otherwise you have a lag time for the individual employee. And there's lots of folks that can't afford a 3-day delay even on a paycheck coming in.
Yeah, and the federal programs are sometimes, applying for them can be cumbersome. I know they try to make them easy to go online. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. I've had some good success accessing my Canada Revenue Agency account, and I've had some bad success accessing it.
Ultimately, you always get through, though.
Yeah, I have gotten through, so that's good. But it's a bit of a process sometimes. And if you're sick, and if you really do have COVID, do you have the wherewithal, for one thing, to go through that? And if you're getting really sick,
even just worrying about it, whether you're sick or you're
yeah,
not sick. And will that cover a mom to stay home with her kid that has to stay home and be tested? Like there's a lot of those questions. So I think just reimbursing the employer is absolutely the right way to go. And
yeah,
kudos to them for going that route.
yeah. And then it's like I say, it's more seamless,
Yeah.
and people are protected because yeah, it's I worked in years ago. I worked in a for lack of a better term, a hostile work environment where you didn't show up for work. Well, that's it. You were done. They didn't really care a lot of times
Yeah.
why you were sick or why you weren't there.
Yeah. Not
So
all employers are great, though. I would
employers,
think that maybe some of the not great ones will not survive this.
yeah, we can only hope.
Yeah.
We can only hope. The other news that came out of Victoria this week, which is kind of interesting, especially for us here in the north, is that the province is mandated after every provincial election to uh, give the Electoral Boundaries Commission its marching orders to redraw the electoral map. And the province has done that. And in this time around doing it, they have told the Electoral Boundaries Commission, or said in legislation, however they do that, to eliminate the provision that the Liberals put in I think it was 2000, yeah, it'd be 2014 after the 2013 election, where they mandated that 10 seats remain in the north regardless of whether of the population. Because electoral boundary seats are generally distributed according to population. They take the population of the province, divide it by 87, or I guess they can allow to increase the number of seats as well to 93. So they divide that. And then they try to set out each electoral riding according to that number, plus or minus 25%. Tracy, your thoughts on maybe we're losing that representation in the north?
Well, I think it's ridiculous to lose any representation in the north. When you're talking about 10 seats out of 93, we don't have the majority of the voices at the table anyway. So to reduce that even further would be completely disenfranchising. And I don't think that that is the intent of a democracy where we are not only witnessing an exodus from these high density urban environments into the rural areas, which will not be captured in this existing census we're all doing right now, but we have to have our concerns heard at those tables in Victoria. And if we lose representation, we will lose that ability to have our concerns heard and put before decision makers. I just cannot imagine that removing a seat up here is really the intent of any party. I think everybody that's elected really wants voices from all over. So it's short-sighted, or it's been missed in their attempt to try and remove partisanship from it. I'm not sure what the motivation would be to remove any up here.
Yeah, I'm not sure, other than it eliminates that sort of sense of partisanship, and I think the NDP made that argument when the Liberals did it at the time, and they were in opposition. They argued that the Liberals were doing this to keep for the number of seats in the north where they have a stronghold, and it's basically gerrymandering. I don't think that was the case. Thinking back on the time, I think there is a legitimate concern when the Liberals did this, that rural representation is going to severely be diminished, simply because there's not as many people living in the rural areas anymore. And if you go strictly on population, then the rural areas get left out. They really
And
do.
we have very different needs and very different concerns. It gets to be a little old listening about all the money going into the TTC in Toronto.
Yeah.
We have real issues up here on our roads and safety concerns, and yet the entire province relies on us as an economic engine. So it's short-sighted from a leadership standpoint, and certainly from a public policy standpoint, to reduce those voices. I really sincerely hope that whoever it is that's got their hands on the levers for sorting this out will recognize that as they start to work through the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's still the Electoral Boundaries Commission. And I believe they still have the ability to go past the plus or minus 25% population benchmark. But whether they would on all 10 ridings in the north, hard to say.
Well, they must, because John Rustad's riding would be one of the smallest populations, I would bet.
Yeah.
But it sits like it's been there, so they must have the ability to move that number around. Oh, we're getting an emergency alert.
I'm getting an emergency alert.
Everybody's getting an emergency alert. There we go. That'll freak out half the world.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was happening. So there you go. It says it's just
a
check, make sure it says it's a test. Yeah,
it did. Remember back in the day when that was your TV and your TV would get that, this is a test. This is only a test.
There you go. Well, at least the test worked, and it's a reminder to me that I did not put my phone on mute while I'm doing this, which is not a good thing to do either.
Mine was on mute and it made noise anyway. So maybe the emergency alerts can bypass that.
Did it make the buzz, or did it make the wee one? Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it buzzed. It made the weird noise. Nice impression of it there, Bill. So for anybody that didn't get that alert just now, you should sign up for it. And I'm not even sure how you do that. Probably to Google or change the settings in your phone.
You have to sign up, or I think they just send it to every cell phone and address in the province, or number, I suppose. I think that's how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you were watching your TV instead of this, which I can't believe anybody was, it probably came on your TV. But and if you were wondering what the noise was, it was just a test.
Excellent.
So lost track of where we were.
We were talking electoral boundaries.
Electoral boundaries.
The need for those northern voices at the decision-making tables.
And of course, the problem is with electoral boundaries. That's another one of those things that government does that, if you're having trouble sleeping at night, just start talking about electoral boundaries. So, it's tough to get people's attention for this, because like electoral boundaries, oh man, talk about a snoozer, because you're going to go through all kinds of, census data and all that kind of stuff. And
thing is, it matters. It ties directly to the census that we've all just done, that lots of folks put off or don't bother doing. And if we're not giving the numbers of population, we have no one but ourselves to blame when we wind up with less seats or less services.
Yeah, for all the folks out there that think the census is just another way for government to find out what we're doing and spy on us. Well, there's a reason for it, and that reason is money, and we do get money back from all the spying that government does through the census. So fill out your form. I don't know if there's still time to fill it out or not.
I think they wanted it yesterday, but hopefully they would do extensions if need be. But even our gas tax transfers are based on that, and all of the money that came through COVID when I think it was Garth Frizzell was announcing it a while back about the new emergency funding coming to municipalities and being dispersed the same as the gas tax. Well, that's population. If we don't tell them we're here, we can't expect them to hear us.
We don't get it. Yeah. And we were just talking a little bit before we came on, and it's sort of interesting. It's a good segue to it with the city, and they're looking at there's going to be a public hearing for a new 200 lot subdivision up on St. Lawrence Avenue. And, you kind of wonder, where are all the people coming from? And because there seems to be more and more subdivisions being built all the time. And so the census is key to capturing that information. If we're getting more people in here, more houses being built, and the city's population actually is increasing, then hopefully the census will reflect that.
Well, the other thing it doesn't capture, though, are recreational properties, and they're selling like at a speed I have never seen around the north right now. And that's going to mean that there's more folks here, whether they're actually living in our region or they're just utilizing our amenities and services. There's going to be more and more folks here too, but the census won't capture that.
Yeah.
I don't know. There never used to be a rush hour in Prince George, but there sure is now.
Yeah, it seems to be getting busy. That's for sure. Whether there's, like I say, where more people are coming from, I don't know. The pipeline work is still going on, so I'm sure there's some of that happening. Um, forest industry, price of lumber these days is through the roof. So I'm sure they're trying to pump out as much as they can before that price crashes, because they know it will sometime.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think things are probably pretty busy. It's tough to see some of those though, how they translate into long-term jobs, right?
Yeah, it's mostly all service industry work that's coming out of those transitional staff or transitional people, I mean.
Yeah,
Well, Bob Simpson calls them all, but the mayor in Quesnel, Bob Simpson, refers to them all as Lower Mainland refugees. And he's based an awful lot of his marketing for Quesnel around the idea of attracting particularly the millennial and Gen Z population.
yeah, and I think we've done some of that here too, and that the shine may be wearing off that, because the sales pitch was that you could sell your 2-bedroom 800 square foot bungalow in Vancouver for $1.2 million and come up here and move into a 5,000 square foot house for 400 and pocket the difference. And that pocketing the difference is getting narrower and narrower, it seems like, because that 800 square foot bungalow in Prince George now is $400,000.
That's true. The house prices have truly gone through the roof. But again, still nothing compared to Montreal, Toronto, or Vancouver.
No, I'm sure if you own property in Vancouver, that split is still available. You're probably selling your place for $2 million now.
Well, I think too, like I look at my youngest son or my nieces that are sticking around this part of the world, it's because to get into the market, you can still dream of getting into the housing market here in the north and in the Lower Mainland, unless you're planning to live in a one room and rent the rest of the place out. Trying to get that first jump into the market is pretty daunting.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned this before. My brother's son and his wife, they both have good paying jobs, and they were living in Vancouver and renting, and they moved to Squamish so they could buy a house. And even then, they need a renter in there to be able to afford it. So they have a basement even in Squamish, right? So
Yeah, and it was what, 6 years ago, our daughter bought her own house here in Prince George, paid $100,000, and it's a house on a double city lot downtown.
wow.
I mean, it's old and it's little, and she's got work to do on it. But again, that's getting into that market.
Yeah, yeah. I've told the story many times when back in the '80s, so it should be that there are still people
Showing your
alive
age, showing your
there.
age.
But I remember just getting into the job market at the time, and had a realtor friend, and he and I was in Fernie, and he convinced he didn't convince me, probably should have. He was on me. He had old post-war houses in downtown Fernie, which is at that time was a little coal mining town out in the boonies, and you could get into one of those houses for under 10 grand.
Yeah.
And then the ski hill took off down there, and geez, you can't get a loaf of bread down there for 10 grand now.
Look at Tumbler Ridge. It wasn't that long ago. They were flogging houses out of Tumbler Ridge at 12 grand.
Yeah, yeah, and I kick myself now. I should have went into Hawk as much as I could and bought up as much property down there as possible. And
Coulda, shoulda, woulda.
coulda, shoulda, woulda. Yeah, that's the whole thing, and that's the whole thing with real estate too, right? It's a long game. If you're looking at it as an investment, you got to look and think down the road, because it's not going to turn around right away. So
yeah, 100%.
But yeah, it's interesting with the we talk about the St. Lawrence subdivision up there, is whether that's another more urban sprawl in this community. There's lots of houses up there, and are they creating vacuums downtown?
I don't know, but it's a lot more streets that have to get plowed, and that will impact the snow plowing budget.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's every time you add a new subdivision, you have all of the services that go along with it. And I mean, I've been quite pleased with the infill happening downtown with the high density and the multi-level, that sort of thing. I suspect that Prince George is at some point going to bump its head onto its boundaries. So you want to preserve the green spaces that exist too. And this is yet another step into the official community plan where they're looking to vary it. Like I don't know whether we need to redo a new plan yet again that we actually follow, or whether we just stop talking about the OCP altogether. But It was intended to lay out a future path for development, and we varied it so many times. I don't know that it's really worth the paper it's written on anymore.
Yeah, and I look at, up on St. Lawrence, if you're looking at more development, I think that's pretty much in the official community plan where you want it to go, right? It's when you get into, somebody wants to put a development somewhere way out in the boonies somewhere that isn't in the plan, that you run into trouble. I think if you're going to have a development, then that's probably a good place for it. I think what triggers some people's reaction on that is like 200 lots. That's a pretty big development. I doubt whether it would be done in one fell swoop. Those things are usually done in phases.
Yeah.
So you do 10, 15 lots, and as you sell those, then you can develop the rest of them. So I'm assuming that's how it would be done.
I imagine they'd have to put all the streets and services in. And then
Yeah, usually, when you're doing the infrastructure, you do the whole infrastructure.
like they did out at Boundary Road.
Yeah.
But then again, you're creating roads that you've got to plow, and new sewer and septic and all of that you got to deal with, whether or not you're getting any tax revenue for the properties or not. I don't know. We've got so much downtown infrastructure that needs to be dealt with underground, all the non-sexy stuff, the sewer lines and the water lines and the electrical. And we've got enough to deal with right now with our underground infrastructure without adding more.
Yeah, there was just the report to council not too long ago about that too. I can't remember the actual number, but it's like an astronomical amount of money that it could cost. Right? I think it was like somewhere around $130 million.
Well, once they start digging, maybe they'll find that there's more water lines than we realize that are running through those old wooden culverts. I mean, I show those pictures of the wooden culverts that came out around City Hall because we accessioned one of them. That's all underground piping made of fir that's just linked and stays swollen by water. It's old tech, and there's no city still using it. But no one's got anything written down or plans. It's like everything in Clayton Memorial Park. It was all done on a handshake in the 50s, and nobody really knows what's going on underneath.
Yeah, those the old wooden culvert or wooden sewer lines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Man, oh man, yeah. Who knows? That's the thing, because well, we often talk about the boom in the 50s and the 60s, but there was infrastructure here prior to that. So who knows what the heck that stuff is.
Particularly everything along George Street, and then in South Fort George and around Connaught Hill. Like there's a lot of really old infrastructure that's there when it was the Three Georges, not Prince George. Yeah. So it's who knows what we will find when next we dig.
Yeah, it's sometimes best left undug, I suppose.
It's like any home renovation. Oh, I'm just going to change this one wall.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like getting Mike Holmes in to look at it. Yeah,
exactly.
The light switch is out, and that means that there's rot in there, and that you got to redo the whole house, right? So.
And we're I think the new subdivision's fine. I just I like to see the infill that's happening and the renovations that are happening to heritage homes and the changes to some of the streets and lots and things downtown. It's that I think is what's going to reinvigorate. We're seeing so much change in the downtown already. I know folks still give me a hard time and say that I'm just too much of an optimist, but George Street, 3rd, 4th, all of that is so different now than it was when I started at the museum in 1994. That sometimes you need that longer view to recognize how much change has happened.
Yeah, well, there's definitely been change, but there's definitely still issues down there, right? They had the tent city pop up there in front of the regional district a week or so ago, and I don't know. I haven't been down there recently to see if it's still there, but I think it just kind of shows up and then disappears for the day and then comes back. And we still have the issues. The social issues that do hurt downtown. It's tough, and the city's committee is working on it. I can never remember the name of it. It's big, long, inclusive bunch of stuff, but it's basically the downtown committee. Mm-hmm. And hopefully they can come up with something that actually helps, right?
I'm excited about the new building going in at the old NR Motors site, the wraparound services and housing and healthcare and medical or mental health care. I think that there's going to be an impact from that.
Yeah, it's a shame that it's still a couple of years out before that actually gets opens and they get working there. But yeah, I think as much as a lot of the new restaurants and stuff downtown to change downtown, I think that will change downtown as well, the face of it, and certainly help. It's going to be plagued by the loss of Save-On downtown, but how do people that are living downtown get groceries? Right? That's going to be the next question. But yeah, that development I think is really going to make a difference.
Yeah.
In the city. So,
well, it might be great. Losing Save-On may create an opportunity for smaller mom and pop type convenience stores. One of the things I've always missed after I lived in Riverdale in Ontario was the convenience store at the corner where I got off of the streetcar. It always had a big thing out front of fresh fruit, and you could buy fresh meat and dairy and everything inside. There were smaller amounts and they were more local, but I liked that from a pick up a couple of things to add to your dinner kind of standpoint on your way home from work if you're walking or using the public transit. So Save-On would have just eaten up all that business in the downtown prior, but I think that there's the potential for there to be some market type operators open up in a variety of places around the downtown.
Yeah, where there's opportunity, business and entrepreneurs will move in. It's interesting because I was just by chance watching the show Still Standing last night. They did Fraser Lake. They did it a couple of years ago. I think I've seen it before, but it was on and nothing else was on. The Canucks were behind 3-0 already, so it's kind of like, okay, what else is on? So Fraser Lake.
Been one of those kind of years with the Canucks.
Yeah, oh yeah, no kidding. But they talked about when they lost their grocery store. They used to have a grocery store there, and it shut down after the mine shut down. And they talked to these people that had just a little corner store, and they were really trying to fill the need. They actually had a book there that people would come in and they could write what they'd like to see the store bring in, and then they would try to bring it in if at all possible, right? So, it's just it's meeting the needs of the customers, and people will move in. So, like you say, hopefully it's more of the specialty shop type stuff and not just a corner outlet like 7-Eleven where you don't really get much for nutritious food.
Yeah, no, you want it to be that whatever's fresh of the day has to be there, local bakery and all the rest of it. But it doesn't have to be huge when you're working in a smaller area. I'm thinking back to, there used to be a Safeway at what's now Princess Auto, and there was Extra Foods in Pine Center Mall where the sports store is. Both of those shut down, and there was hue and cry about it for the neighborhoods in that area, and folks adapted.
Yeah, it'll be interesting with the grocery store back at the mall, how that will transpire. It's a huge spot.
Yeah, it's monstrous. I don't know how they'll fill that, but maybe they won't use the whole thing either.
Maybe not. It'll be interesting, but
well, the store we're losing is my grocery store. It's the one I always go to, so I'll have to update you when they open the new one.
I always go to Spruceland, so that's the closest to me. So
you go to that one because it's got the booze in it, don't you?
Well, that too. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, I suppose they won't be able to have a liquor section.
What's that?
The new one at Pine Center won't be allowed to have a liquor section either. It'll be too close to the Signature liquor store.
Yeah, it probably will.
Yeah.
Probably will. Interesting. I never even thought of that.
No, I didn't either till just now.
Yeah.
Oh well. Always an adventure. The only thing certain is nothing stays the same.
Yeah, and I don't think Jimmy Patterson's losing any money these days. But,
no, I don't think so either. Now we're all off topic. I think we're just going to be boring anybody who's listening to us. Yeah, you have more cool topics to talk about?
Yeah, I think I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, unless you've got something you want to, some burning issue that you want to raise here.
Well, I owe my mother a happy Mother's Day because my week went to heck and I never sent her anything. So happy
Well,
Mother's Day from before, Mom.
happy belated Mother's Day to everyone out there.
And I just got a text from Chuck Nisbet. He just got his first shot.
Oh, good. Yeah, probably got it here somewhere. So
Yeah,
well
all
done,
good.
Chuck. Yeah, and as he said on here, his wife has actually had COVID and is still feeling the effects of it several months later. Still not back to 100%. So yeah, make sure that you get your vaccine. And I guess that's the other thing you talk about is the AstraZeneca debacle. I think we both had AstraZeneca shots, so now we're in that wondering what the hell's going to happen now with AstraZeneca. But that's kind of above our pay grade. I don't know.
Everything that I'm seeing from the various science tables that I sit at is folks saying not to feel remorse if you went for that first AstraZeneca shot.
Yeah.
It was the right thing to do, and we're learning as we go. So even with the rare side effects, they're treatable. It's just a case of paying attention to the potential for there being a problem down the road. And I don't think they're going to be doing a double AstraZeneca, the study coming out of the UK, where they are looking at the mix and match. So doing an mRNA vaccine as the second dose for those that took AstraZeneca first. That's actually looking like it can be an even more robust protection to do that mix and match. So I suspect that's where we're headed in Canada.
Yeah, which is awesome. Having had the AstraZeneca, I don't have any problem with taking either Pfizer or Moderna for my second shot. The only question, of course, is whether they are whether, like you say, if you get the same amount of coverage, or I don't know,
Protection.
immunity. Yeah.
Getting that AstraZeneca as we did, and it's mostly been our generation grabbing it because of the way the timing worked and the supply. I still think it was 100% the right thing to do. And you've only to look at the UK to see that they've really managed to get their outbreaks back under control, and mostly through the use of AstraZeneca. So
Yeah, I agree. It was funny when I had booked through Northern Health um, to get probably would have been a Pfizer shot, I imagine, and on the day that I had received notification that I actually had a date through Northern Health, I went down to my pharmacy and they just said, "Oh, come on in." And get the AstraZeneca one. So it was probably, I would have, if I had waited until I got the Pfizer one, it was probably, I can't remember how much difference it was probably a week difference. So I just said, no, I'll take the AstraZeneca one. Then I'm a week
it's
ahead.
absolutely the right thing to do. You consider how many people are getting blood clots who wind up with COVID, then that's a much higher number than people with the vaccine are ending up with the blood clots. I mean, for me, I'm 51 and I still wouldn't be on the list for a Pfizer or a Moderna. And I've had my AstraZeneca now for 3 weeks, and that offers me protection, my family protection, and it stops me being a host for COVID to just mutate in. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, it certainly gives a lot better peace of mind. I'm still cognizant of being around and the fact that I can carry it and infect other people. So I wear a mask and do all that social distancing. But I don't, you don't have that fear that, oh my God, I'm going to catch it and I'm going to die.
Yeah. For me, it was even so much about not wanting to give it to anybody else.
Yeah. Because I may still get it, but the chances of dying from it are just very minuscule, right?
All the shots are the same, sort of 95% protection after the first shot, regardless of whether it's the viral vector or the mRNA. So I don't know. I'm listening to smarter people than me at the science tables, and they're saying this is the way to go. So I will take their word for it because I know their intentions are always about trying to protect Canadians and the rest of the world, for that matter.
Yeah, and hopefully people don't listen to all the freedom people, because this has nothing to do with freedom.
No, it's more about the freedom to live. I would like to be alive and to be able to see everybody. I'm very frustrated with the anti-mask rally, and I listened to Jagmeet Singh on CBC, I think it was yesterday morning, and he was talking specifically about his feeling that the far right are definitely taking advantage of people's fears and frustrations, and that they are very much involved in these so-called freedom rallies.
Yeah, that I think that came first from Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi. He had made those comments on the weekend, and I think he was bang on. And you know, and the frustration continues because I shared a story from about that from Naheed Nenshi on our Facebook page, and I got a comment saying, "Well, of course he would go that low because he's not Caucasian."
Oh, please.
Yeah, it's just like, oh man, you know. And
Yeah,
so,
it's really disheartening, but COVID has laid bare a lot of things, and I think all of us are tired and frustrated and short-tempered, and so all of us can say things that probably we shouldn't. I just think that it's a shame when you have organized groups, whether you're talking about white nationalists or whether you're talking about the extreme right, taking advantage of the situation the whole world is in to try and further their own political aims.
yeah, very much so. Yeah, it is kind of crazy.
It's really disappointing, but I think that by and large, the bulk of the population worldwide understands that we're all in this together and we're all rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, that's the one thing I can't quite get a good handle on yet is how many of the anti-maskers and that are actually out there. You know, they make a lot of noise, they get a lot of attention, but is it as big a group overall as they seem to be? I don't know that they are, because a lot
Why
of these
not?
guys are very, very good and very adept at grabbing attention through social media. You know, there's that one guy who's running to be the mayor of Calgary. He's just, and he was up in Dawson Creek or somewhere and got in big altercations up there. This is what he does, is agitate. You know, so they are good at say grabbing headlines, and whether they're representative of the majority, I rather doubt it. So
I certainly don't see it. And when you drive past down a speak on Saturdays where they're doing their protests here in Prince George, it's not a huge group and there's not tons of people driving by and honking and waving.
you know, and there will be a group of nurses who are going to rally across the street from them on this Saturday. So that should be interesting. See how that transpires.
Yeah, I mean, folks should always be able to express their opinions. I just think that it has to be done without animosity and with accusatory approaches.
Yes.
I don't know. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
But I suppose if there's anybody listening from that group, the museum would love to collect your placards to go with the COVID collection.
Absolutely. There you go. Well, there was just two of us, so we didn't think we'd pull up a full hour, but we did 45 minutes.
All that means is you and I can blather.
Yeah, we can blab on. I haven't checked to see whether we've had a lot of comments or not. So
we're getting unreliable on you, Bill. You're going to need a wider stable of talking heads.
There you go. I'll have to cast my net, but I think we do a pretty good job. So
it's fun. I don't know if anybody listens to us, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, well, we do get listeners, we do get watchers, and we do get some people that comment from time to time. So we want to thank everybody for doing that, for paying attention, because that's part of why we do this, is that conversation is always good, whether you agree with it or not. That's secondary. The conversation is the main part. As long as we continue to talk to each other in a respectful way, then we're moving forward.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, when we're devolve into screaming and yelling, then we're not accomplishing anything. I found that out a long time ago when I was in the corporate world. When I went into my boss's office and screamed and yelled at him, I didn't get anywhere. So
yeah,
you a little more tact, you usually get what you want, right? So
true enough. Throwing binders at people is never going to get you anywhere.
no. On that note, once again, thanks everyone for watching, and we will be back again next week.
Cheers.